The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin. Welcome to the Canola School. Today we are in Ontario, in Wellington County, and we're looking at the potential for winter canola. To talk about the opportunities and the challenges, I'm joined by OMAFRA canola and dry bean specialist, Meghan Moran. Hi, Meghan. Great to have you on Canola School.
Hi, Bern. Thanks for having me. So glad to have you here in a winter canola field.
And it is an awesome field. And let's start here. How long have we been growing, winter canola in Ontario?
Yeah, it's actually not that new. There's certainly been production, maybe even in the 80s and 90s, and in the last few years there's been a little bit of winter canola here and there, but it got difficult to get seed. So we've seen this resurgence in the last 5 years with the new variety that we're growing.
Awesome. Hey, so let's talk about seed bed preparation. Let's start at the beginning of this crop. What crops are you typically going to follow in a rotation, for example?
Yeah, because of the time we have to plant it, in Ontario we're typically following winter wheat. We could, in theory, follow an early harvested crop like peas or fresh peas, but there are some herbicide restrictions that make it difficult.
What about planting date? When is the optimum time to get this crop in the ground in the fall?
Yeah, we've had trials in Essex County, and down there we're good until about September 20th. But I really want to see growers putting winter canola in the ground the first week of September. So this crop was planted September 5th. And it did get a little bit large in the fall, almost up to my knees, but we had a nice warm open November, so we had a lot of late season growth. So in this area in Wellington County, I'd love to see growers plant before the 7th of September. Further south, we're good for another week or two. And then as we go north from Wellington County, it gets a little dicier, certainly the first week of September or a little bit earlier.
What about plant densities and target populations? How do they differ from what we see in Western Canada?
Yeah, I think it is different than spring canola. We know that canola can yield strongly from 5 to 20 plants per square foot, but we're really worried about overwintering with winter canola. So if we give plants space, they grow a little bigger in the fall and they set their crowns nice and close to the soil surface. So I like to aim for 5 to 7 plants and no more. And thin stands actually do really well.
Right. So Meghan, what are the keys to crop establishment in the fall? What do you want to see, fertility, nitrogen, how does it all come together?
Yeah, I think one of the keys is we do need to do some tillage, especially where we're following winter wheat. Residue really leads to big problems with slugs, and slugs are really plentiful in the fall. So some tillage for seedbed prep. And we need to get to about the 6-leaf stage. So we need about 30 to 40 pounds of actual nitrogen there and a bit of sulfur as well. So we are putting up to, we don't have it all entirely worked out, but about 10 to 20 pounds of sulfur in the fall as well.
What does this crop need to look like as you go into fall, as you go into dormancy? Meghan, what do you want to see in fields?
Yeah, ideally I'd like we want to be in the rosette stage. We don't want it to bolt, but I'm less and less worried about bolting. I've never seen this variety really bolt, this variety Mercedes bolt in the fall. So I'm really comfortable with planting early, and getting it to the 6-leaf stage is ideal. In the southern counties, if it's a little smaller, it'll probably survive, but I'm still aiming for at least 6 leaves. And yeah, we want a root. It's really about root growth. We want a nice big root, at least the width of a pencil, ideally. The bigger the root, the better the survival.
What about winter kill? Is that an issue here in Ontario?
Yeah, for sure. Winter kill is the biggest risk with this crop. So that's why it's really important to get the crop planted early and try to get good, robust plants heading into the winter. So like I said, we want them kind of spaced out so they have room to get nice and big. The bigger the root, the better. It also prevents it from heaving. And we've had really good success in some trials, and based on info from colleagues in the States, Mercedes is really winter hardy. So this variety does well, and we have, had to terminate some fields. Clay soils are problematic, but we're having pretty good success with overwintering.
Let's talk about the spring now. Tell me about crop conditions coming out of the winter, and what do you need to see in the spring to have that strong yield potential?
Yeah, ideally we want, you know, a nice gradual and consistent warming up. That would be best. Of course, we don't always get that, but it'll start to grow once temperatures are like 5 degrees, and in late spring frost can be a problem. Sometimes it gets warm, the canola flowers, and then we get a frost. In theory, you can lose some flowers or abort some buds will abort with late spring frost. But again, this variety has looked really good, and we haven't seen a lot of problems. So yeah, and once it's above, say, 10 or 15 degrees, it just loves that and starts to bloom. Yeah.
Off it goes. Hey, let's talk about disease management. What key diseases are we on the lookout for? You know, sclerotinia, clubroot, and what's your strategic approach?
Yeah, the biggest disease risk is white mold or sclerotinia, and so we are typically applying a fungicide to manage that, just as you would in spring canola at 20 to 50% bloom. This year risk was lower because it was cooler and it hasn't been as wet, but there is good ROI on applying a fungicide. Clubroot, in theory, I think can be a problem. Certainly winter canola grown in Europe has clubroot or can get clubroot, but so we're monitoring for that disease on fields, but some researchers think it won't be as much of an issue in winter canola because of the cold weather. I think there's still a chance it'll set in. So similar to spring canola, we're just monitoring for that disease.
What about insects? Is swede midge a problem in winter canola?
No, actually, swede midge is not a problem in winter canola, and this is what it gets me kind of excited about this crop, especially here in Wellington County where we're also growing spring canola. So swede midge emerged from the soil around June 1st, and as long as canola is bolted, swede midge are much less of an issue, and of course they're not going to harm this crop now. It's too far along, so no risk of swede midge injury. The main insect of concern is cabbage seed pod weevil, and if it's 15 degrees, they can be around, and we found a few in the field, but it's, again, similar to spring canola. We monitor for them with a sweep net.
Tell me about spring, summer conditions, you know, to optimize yield. Do you need to avoid that big heat in the summer during flowering?
Yeah, if it's above 29 degrees, just like spring canola, that will cause some abortion. But because this crop is flowering in May, we have less issues with hot weather. Now, it was 30 degrees the other day, but it's less. The heat is less of an issue because of the timing, and that's why we're able to grow winter canola down in Essex and Chatham-Kent counties. Because it's flowering so much earlier. Now, of course, the late spring frosts are also a concern, but so far we haven't had any extreme issues with late spring frosts.
Let's talk about harvest. What's your timing, and given some reasonable conditions, what's your expected yield?
Right. So harvest should be just prior to winter wheat harvest. We think about 2 weeks prior to winter wheat harvest. So I mean, you can harvest. It may be in June, late June, it may be in early July. One year we had a lot of rain and a grower harvested in August, but typically it's early in July.
Right. And what about yields?
Yes, so I think our yield goal is about 70 bushels or 3,500 pounds. I think that's a really reasonable yield goal, and we should fertilize with that yield goal in mind. And that's kind of the average of what we've seen. We have certainly seen really strong yields up to over 5,000 pounds to the acre on one really exceptional field. And but generally, we are yielding more than with spring canola for sure.
And you've got some opportunities potentially with some following crops, double crop soybeans people always talk about, especially in a year like this, but you do have that option and that potential?
Yeah, there is a double crop option, primarily in the southern counties again. So we usually try to get our double crop soybeans in by July 15th. I think it really depends on rainfall. You want some rainfall to get those soybeans emerged. But yeah, some growers are definitely trying that and having a bit of success for sure.
Hey, final question for you, and that is the big picture. Based on what you've observed and the work that you've done, how would you describe the future for winter canola here in Ontario?
Yeah, I'm actually really excited about this crop. I think there is a lot of opportunity to increase acres. So we're just shy of 5,000 acres right now, but I think throughout all of southern Ontario, there's opportunity to grow this crop and really lengthen some crop rotations. And we all know canola really breaks up soil and is good for soil health. So I'd really like to see more growers put winter canola in rotation. And then here in, say, Wellington County or even Grey and Bruce, where we have that risk of swede midge in our spring crop, I really am excited about seeing growers put some winter canola in on fields that they expect to have good winter survival, where the soils aren't as heavy, and that avoids the risk of swede midge there. And then maybe on their other fields where they wouldn't expect good winter canola survival, they take the risk of swede midge instead. So yeah, I think there's a lot of potential for this crop, and looking forward to hopefully getting more varieties registered as well.
Megan, this is quite a picture and quite a story. Thanks for joining me on the Canola School.
Absolutely, thanks for having me.